Hello there. Well, what a surprise. President Macron of France says Brexit should not be used as an excuse to cut the EU €1 trillion budget. But that has not been met with anywhere near universal approval. Firstly, as ever, please kick that YouTube algorithm up the rear by giving this video a big fat like. And I'm always uploading new content, so please do check my YouTube channel daily. So, on the one hand, we now have the French President Emmanuel Macron thumping his little fists and demanding that the EU budget be maintained on the basis that just because the UK is leaving and taking its money with it, it is no excuse to put all the grand EU schemes on hold. While on the other hand, we have the now caretaker Prime Minister of the Irish Republic, Leo Varadkar, up in arms because his country, member state, is being asked to front up with more contributions to make up some of the £63 billion budget shortfall caused by Brexit. On arriving at the budget summit in Brussels, Monsieur Macron said, "It is unacceptable to think that because the UK is no longer part of the EU, we need to give up on our ambitions." And he went on to say, "For me, there is no compromise, if we're compromising European ambitions." But Macron's France is currently in the midst of a revolution that is not being reported by the UK mainstream media. After all, it might spoil the image of the EU in the eyes of Brits, just when the likes of the BBC wants the worst possible press for the UK and the best possible press for the EU 27. After all, it's pretty obvious that the BBC wants the EU to win the upper hand over the UK in the Brexit negotiations. But that new French revolution could be further fuelled if their president is unable to bring the common agricultural policy subsidies home nice and safely. And Macron has also put the backs of other EU leaders up by suggesting that cutting the budget or having rebates for some countries was anti-European. To which the Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz said, "We represent the interests of our taxpayers here. One is not anti-European if you want to save money." And the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte, said he couldn't sign up to the current proposals and didn't know what to say in the talks. So he said he'd be spending his time reading a new copy of a biography on Chopin he'd just bought. What else is there to do, he said. So there are many amongst the EU 27 leaders now questioning why they should have to stump up the cash or be the ones to suffer a funding shortfall for others' benefit. Consequently, Macron is comprehensively up against the wall with nowhere to run. Yes, very bad news for teacher's pet Macron, and it could end up in tears for him as his wife tucks him up in bed and reads him his bedtime story. And comparing the so-called frugal four countries of Austria, Denmark, the Netherlands and Sweden with the UK when Thatcher won its rebate, one EU diplomat said, "The UK might have gone, but there are at least 4 Thatchers in the EU now." Well, that might also now apply to the 5th EU member state, that of the Republic of Ireland. The former Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, who resigned after getting a drubbing in his country's recent general election, is attending the budget talks as caretaker leader until a new government is formed. And he slammed the budget proposals, saying, "I met with President Michel and President von der Leyen at around 2 a.m. last night with Minister McEntee, and the proposal on the table is one we can't accept. Essentially, it means that Ireland will contribute much more to the EU budget, but will actually receive less back in terms of payments to Irish farmers and also funds for regional development and social development. We accept that as a country that has a growing economy, as a country with full employment, we will have to pay more into the European budget over the next 7 years. But we can't accept that in return for paying more in, that we would see very significant cuts to CAP and to cohesion funds. That's not something we can accept, and I made that very clear to President von der Leyen and President Michel last night. On that basis, I don't think we will have an agreement today on the MFF. Well, it looks like this so-called four-shirter of a budget meeting will be going nowhere fast then. And the more it goes nowhere, the more panic there will be amongst the Eurocrats. And why exactly is the EU panicking? Because without agreement, the whole EU project will grind to a halt. And if you ever wanted proof that the UK, as one of the net contributors, has been helping to prop up the European Union project all these years, just take a look at that vicious infighting now taking place in Brussels. And as I mentioned in a video a few days ago, farmers across Europe are at breaking point. The question is, which countries are going to have to feel the pinch because the Brussels beast needs feeding? And this panic cannot be seen more clearly than in the EU's puerile demands for the UK to hand over its fish, the Elgin marbles, as well as its sovereignty over Northern Ireland and Gibraltar, while demanding the UK stays firmly tied to the EU's courts. I mean, how can the UK negotiate with Eurocrats who have decided to behave in such a juvenile manner over something as fundamentally important as Brexit, something that affects their future as much as it does ours, if not more? So it's good news that the UK chief Brexit negotiator David Frost is sticking firmly to the task of not compromising the UK negotiating position, saying, "We bring to the negotiations not some clever tactical positioning, but the fundamentals of what it means to be an independent country. It is central to our vision that we must have the ability to set laws that suit us, to claim the right that every other non-EU country in the world has. But we should all be in no doubt at all that there are many within our political establishment that would like to see the UK tied into the EU system and continuing to prop it up with our taxpayers' hard-earned folding stuff, either by the front door with continued contributions or via the back door with big infrastructure or engineering contracts, for example. So it will be interesting to see in whose hands the money to pay for the hugely bloated HS2 bills ends up, won't it? And then when you look at this self-proclaimed trade body of the European Union in any detail, you get to realise how hideously expensive the whole shebang really is. Let's compare the EU with another well-known trade body, shall we? The World Trade Organization, or WTO. In pure budgetary terms, the EU had a total budget in 2018 for its then 28 members of €160.1 billion, which equates to about £142.5 billion, which would mean about £1 trillion over a full 7-year EU budget cycle. Now look at the World Trade Organization, which had a budget in 2018 for its 164 members of a tad over 192 million, not billion, 192 million Swiss francs. That works out at about £155.8 million. But the WTO is a trade body. Unlike the EU, the WTO does not dictate how you run your country. It does not meddle in your internal affairs. It does not insist on overruling your courts in everything. It does not insist on running your foreign policy. It does not insist on building a defence and security union. It does not insist that it needs a space capability with a military-grade satellite system to conduct its operations, and the list goes on. And the WTO does not reach into your VAT takings or gross national income or take most of the import tariffs you collect. According to its website, the WTO derives its income from annual contributions from its 164 members and miscellaneous income. These contributions are based on a formula that takes into account each member's share of international trade. Miscellaneous income mainly consists of contributions from observer countries, income from the sale of publications, and rental of meeting rooms. And unlike the redistributive EU, every single country that signs up to the WTO is a net contributor. In fact, there is a minimum amount a country can pay in. The EU only soaks up so much dosh because it is not a trading bloc. No, because it is a superstate in the making, an authoritarian superstate at that. It does not take a genius to work that one out. And when Macron talks about the ambitions of the European Union, is he really talking about the ambitions of the citizens of the EU 27 member states, or merely the ambitions of a few well-placed politicians and bureaucrats who all personally benefit so much from other people's money? And looking at how it's being handled at present, all I can say is we should thank our lucky stars that we are out of it. Anyway, if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell, or you won't get any notifications. And if you want to see more of me, buy a mug with my mug on it. So what do you think about this EU budget saga? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.